Welcome to the Reloading Podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network, presented by Four Patriots and Patriot Patch Company. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing good. Busy day today.
Yeah, what'd you do?
Well, just kind of organize things and getting a few things set up to start reloading. Went through all my 308 brass that needed to be annealed and got it all together. And it's mostly for the M1A, so it takes a while for that to kick over. So
Yeah,
I got a full 500 cases ready to go for that. Put an order in for some blue bullets. Whoa. Ford, found on road dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to try them out and cases together. Lots and lots of, it's getting to be handgun season for me. So go to indoor range and shoot.
Yeah.
So 3 50 caliber boxes of handgun brass has to go.
Mm-hmm.
So a box of 45, a box of 9, and a box of 38 specials. So yeah, busy day.
Sounds like it.
How about you?
Not really. Reloading wise. Work was busy, but I did get a chance to clean out my bench a little bit here. So,
well, that's good.
As I was sitting here talking to you, and now I'm trying to repair my IntelliDropper. So you got to remember how to do that. So
yeah, I'll get a this week. I'll send out the files to you for the 1911 build.
Okay.
So you can start whittling away at the barrel.
Yeah. Because that'll take forever.
Just got to go slow. That's all.
Yeah.
Slow and a lot of blue Dykem or a wide magic marker, blue one. Prefer blue or black.
Yeah.
So today
anyway,
we're going to talk about what?
So we've kind of talked about this before, but we haven't really talked about it in a while, and we've been getting a lot of traffic about this in the Discord chat. Hand loading versus reloading. Why? What's the big deal? So, for the most part, I reload. And you hand load.
Yeah.
What do those terms mean?
Reloading is, to me, is just kind of restuffing what's there. Okay. Handgun. That's, I'm just going to, work up a load that's safe, accurate, and punch out a lot.
Yep.
Okay. And hand loading, boy, that goes into the rabbit hole as far as I'm concerned, because I have to sit down and make sure that the case is annealed and all this other stuff that a lot of people don't want to go into or don't have the money to go into.
Mm-hmm. What's this rabbit hole you talk about?
Oh, well, number one is the brass. Okay. You you have to use good. You have to find and use good brass.
So range
And
pickup's not a good idea.
range pickup isn't going to work. You're going to try to buy for if it's a hunting gun. Okay, let's call a hunting gun first. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to buy 100 pieces of brass for that hunting gun, and I am going to massage the brass by turning the necks,
So
cutting the.
you're not talking about like, ooh, I'm massaging the brass. That's not what you're talking about.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, no, I'm trying to make it fit that chamber of that gun better.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna cut the primer pockets so they're deep enough, level, and so I can see the primer in there perfectly, not just haphazard, but each one is going to go so they'll all measure within a 10 thousandths of each other as far as the depth of it. Um, I'm gonna check the flash hole, see if there's any burrs or anything around it, and I'm not going to use like a Lyman type tool, but I'm going to use a tool that has got a flat uh, uh, base on it, so it cuts it flat, or with maybe a tiny chamfer in there. Nothing, no volcano type opening in there. A lot of my flash holes are going to be smaller than normal. They're going to be point zero point zero six two flash holes versus 0.081 flash holes.
So how do you control that?
Um, Specialized tools, buying the right brass. Both of those are what's gonna, you know, gonna what you going to be what you need to just get the primer pockets right. Adjustable uh, uh, primer pocket uh, cutter, where so I can set the primer pocket to exactly what I need. I'll measure it, cut one, measure again, and go from there. And that's just getting the brass ready to be fired. And then we start going into the the load, the set, priming the case, charging the case, setting the neck tension on the case, what I'm gonna use, how I'm gonna get there. Um, so there's lots of ways down that rabbit hole to make the my brass better, my load better, and then it's going to depend upon my gun too. Um, there's a person on the internet that calls it the three B's: brass, bullets, and barrels, and all the toys that go to make it work. Gets expensive, and can everybody do it? Does everybody want to hand load? That's the question.
So excuse me. So um so I shoot, oh, I fell in love with 270 WSSM, okay?
Hmm.
Or 257 Roberts, or 730 Waters,
Okay.
something that's, and I that's my whitetail cartridge, okay? That's the only thing I do.
Do you
Does it
need
pay?
to? Does
Does
it
it
pay to go down the
rabbit
rabbit
hole?
hole? Um, Probably not.
Okay.
You're looking at a 1 inch accuracy you can get from reloading. You have to be a little cleaner and
Yeah.
everything else, but you can get 1 inch, at 100 yards, without uh, a lot of extra work into it.
Mm-hmm.
Does it help if you use the same brass? Yes, it's almost a given. All right. Does it help to kneel? Yeah, it does. Do you need to spend $1,600 on an amp annealer? No. A flame annealer will work. Is it nice to spend the $1,600 on an amp annealer? If you got the money,
Yeah.
yeah. The same way as having a lab radar or you know you know super trickler
Mm-hmm.
scale. Um, all that stuff is nice stuff. But I just did a review last week of the RCBS Link powder dispenser, and for 1 inch at 100 yards, 2 inches at 200, 3 inches at 300, it's fine. It's 100% fine. I don't think you know you're going to see that much of a difference unless you're wanting to shoot those half-inch, quarter-inch groups.
Okay.
Um,
So if I'm just gonna reload,
yeah.
what are my? Hold on. Let me open up a show notes here so I can actually. We're gonna make two lists of equipment, one for reloading and
Hmm.
one for hand loading of what we think is absolute minimum.
Okay.
Because that's one thing we haven't done. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but we've never really sat down and said, okay, so if you're going to be a reloader, this is the bare minimum stuff you need. And if you're going to be a hand loader and you're going to go down the rabbit hole, this is kind of the bare minimum.
Okay.
So,
So let's start with reloading. Okay. Let's get that one through first. First thing you're going to need is a good, accurate press. Okay. Accurate could be a Dillon 550, 650, or a single stage press, whatever you feel like um, you're going to want to run your ammunition through.
okay.
All right. Um, good good dies. I mean, good dies. Don't Too many people cheap out on reloading dies, and
Now, are you
they have.
talking specifically buying used or are you talking like buying Lee?
I no, I'm saying that even the two big names that we are three big names that we see, the L, the H, and the R, initial R's, okay,
Mm-hmm.
have sometimes have problems with their dies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the uh, um, the big name R, they seem to have a better quality control in their dies.
Okay.
All right. Um, so it's
So
expensive.
good dies not necessarily meaning brand wise, but meaning they're made correctly.
They're made correctly. They're accurate to your rifle, okay, or handgun. I'm going to list both of them in there because somebody says um, on here that they could have problems with a hard time getting a PPC to shoot 1 inch at 100 yards. I'll bet you could do it. Okay. Getting a 9mm to shoot a 1 inch at 100 yards. It can be done.
Um, Oh, I know it can be done. It's a question of, um, honestly, if you want to spend enough time, you can get it to do it just with the gun as it is. But my guess is, if I remember correctly, that's an AR platform, not
Right,
like a Ruger or something like that. So I'm sure his barrel has something to do with it,
right.
which is
Uh,
kind of surprising because that particular person usually spends decent money on decent stuff. So,
Yeah,
but
but it's like the saying, brass bullets and
barrel.
barrels. Okay. So if we're using good brass, brand new virgin brass, um, good bullets, and that doesn't mean, uh, coated bullets. I'm talking a good, accurate 9 millimeter bullet and a good barrel. It should be able to shoot an inch at 100 yards.
So is it the shooter then?
It could be the shooter,
Okay.
or it could be the person that's loading it too.
Yeah.
How they go about it. But
And no, Ken, I'm not purposely picking the person we're talking about is Ken, and no, I'm not picking on Ken as a point of picking on Ken. Ken's actually a really good shooter. Um, definitely better than me. I will freely admit that he can shoot the lights out when it comes to. If I was going to go into a contest with him, it wouldn't be a contest. He'd smoke me all day long and twice on Sundays. Um,
we're
but
just
we're
commenting
tossing
that,
out ideas. So
right.
I wanted to clarify that before somebody comes along and watches the chat and says, "Oh, they're ripping on Ken." No,
No, we're just
Ken
this
gave us
is
an example and we're running
right.
with it. But we're going to kind of focus back to the reloading end of it versus the hand loading because that
Of
particular situation is more of a hand loading issue than it would I would say a reloading
right.
because most people aren't going to be shooting a pistol caliber the kind of example
PPC.
we're using is a hunter.
Right.
So um so accurate press, good dies, made correctly and accurate to your firearm. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily eliminate any brand, but it doesn't other than probably Redding, it doesn't as far as you're commercially available. I'm not talking like Widden and the
Right.
other, Area 419 and the other stuff like that. I'm talking about stuff you can go down to your local reloading shop and buy.
Right. Exactly.
Um, so good dies made correctly and accurate to fire your firearm.
Right.
So you may start out with one brand of dies and all of a sudden find out, well, they're not right. So you can try and get the company to replace them. Some will, some won't. Some will say, that's the way the die is made, yada yada. Um,
I have 13 dies for 308
yep.
for an M1A. Okay. For an M1A, 13 dies.
Wow.
All right. That was just trying to find the right dies to make it work.
Yeah.
All
Out of
right.
curiosity, were they all brand new or were any of them used?
All brand new.
Okay.
All brand new. And I mean, it was buying, one here, one there, trying this set or trying that set.
Now, are they all full length sizing and seating dies, or did you go to a neck and then different things? And
No, they're all full length.
okay,
All right. They eventually I went down to I found a small base die.
okay.
Okay, but it took 2 tries. All right,
So two
before
different
I found
brands of the small base die.
three different
Oh,
brands
no, that's
of
kind of
small
surprising.
base. Okay,
Okay.
and then seating dies.
What do you got a match chamber on this thing?
Yes,
Well, that explains a lot
but it doesn't
then.
matter. It
Yeah, but
was.
I mean, you're talking an
It,
M1A.
I'm talking an
Typically,
M1A.
typically an M1A, unless it's a match, you're not going to have that much of an issue finding a die for it because the chamber's tolerances aren't there. Um, typically an M1A, even the Springfield ones you buy now, unless you're buying the match or the SOCOM, it's a standard 308 chamber. It's not a tighter toleranced match chamber or a better chamber. So that kind of explains a little bit of the die. Uh,
Right.
so
But it's still, you start out with a standard die, right?
right,
Everybody does. Okay.
exactly.
We all
Standard full size.
standard full length, full
Yep.
size. Okay. Went in, started, running brass through it and everything else. and
Hmm.
finding it not getting a good chambering on it. All right, so buy another set, buy another set, not sets, individual dies. Eventually, trying this sizing die, trying that sizing die, and you just can't. It's not 10 shots to find out if it works. You're trying 100 shots if it's going to work.
Okay.
All right, so trial and error.
Um, Machine 648 has a question, which is very apropos at this time. How do you know if the die is bad?
I look at how it comes back out of the how first how it chambers, how the gun handles the round as I go to chamber it.
Okay.
In a hunting rifle, I want the bolt to drop pretty easily. All
Yeah.
right, I don't want to fight something. A lot of times, I've bought dies and I'm fighting to close the bolt.
Right.
Okay, I mean, really, it's full length size. I'm sitting there, everything's trimmed to the right length, everything, and it gun just doesn't want to eat the round right. And when you're going in a semi-automatic, you can really tell because it won't. It'll slam into the chamber okay, but doing that, you're putting stresses on that cartridge and pushing things around where they're not supposed to be. It should still be able to let the bolt handle go, and the round and the bolt should drop nicely. Shouldn't be any strain or anything else on it, and you should be able to do it. Um, 20 out of 20 times out of the whole magazine. Just pull it back, let it go. Then when you shoot, you want to see how much expansion comes into the the brass case versus what the size round was. So you want to see if there's somewhere, um is it tight, is it loose? I mean, is there a lot of expansion in that one, or is it because if not a lot, if there's a lot of expansion in it, means it's not filling the chamber up. So it goes pretty good, easy, but then you're really working your brass hard. So there's a lot goes into finding the right dies in a set, and it seems to be nowadays the more money you spend on that die, the better off you are. Especially with some of the options that they have of bushing dies. Um, you can go to Forester and give them 3 cases, and they can hone the dies to fit your gun. So you eliminating a lot of the problems of finding a good set of dies
And the
nowadays.
Forester press, is one of the better single stages out there as long as you can afford it. So,
Right.
um, now let's say we're on a budget here.
Okay.
Um, and we're looking at um, what what obviously there's some kits and stuff out there that you can get. Um, the one press I probably would recommend to absolutely stay away from at all completely is the Lee Loadmaster, um, and the Lee Pro 1000. Uh, I would stay away from both those. If you find them used or new, don't buy them. That's a Loadmaster. I've loaded 20,000 40 Smith & Wesson cases on it. So it works. Now you wind up doing some tinkering with it even as you're going. So, um, but it works. However, there's other options out there, and if you're looking for progressives, um, you know, there's presses out there you can get for a little more money that you can just go with. So and they continue to add more all the time. So um if you're not loading for what we're talking about, which is reloading for like deer hunting or elk hunting or antelope or whatever your one species is you're hunting with this rifle, maybe it's moose, I don't know, caribou, depending on where you're at, um poachers, if you're in Africa, you know um you wanna put what? It's viable. You can actually make some big money in Africa hunting poachers. Look it up. I'm not gonna go do it, but just saying. Um. Anyway, back to the thought. So it's a matter of ROI, return on investment.
Hmm.
Um, if you're gonna be loading,
If you got one gun to reload, one gun,
yep,
okay,
only one.
single stage press. That's it. Okay,
What
you
I
can
would
get it.
probably, yeah,
You can get an RCBS. You can get a Hornady. You can get a Redding. You can get all those. A coax.
get
A
the
good cast iron press.
even this Lee O press isn't bad. Um,
Right.
you can get it as a kit. The problem I have with the Lee kits is it comes with their scale. And okay, if you learn how to use it, it's accurate. Okay. The
Yeah.
problem is one out of every probably 100 people that use that scale actually learn how to use it. So the other 99 are throwing charges that are wrong. And that's not something we want to do. So, you know, uh, sometimes it's one of those where it's better, saving up a little bit or checking out the used market. Like this one here, this is an all house scale. I got it, I think, off eBay for like $55,
Mhm.
and it is probably one of the finest balance beam scales ever made.
Sure.
So,
Sure. And
um,
to go along with it, though, at the same time, you buy a scale, a good scale. All right. Buy a set of check weights.
right, and that's the one thing I
So,
haven't done yet. But I have I have a way to check it. I don't have official check weights, but what I have is I have a Frankfurt Arsenal IntelliDropper, which comes with calibration weights, which in theory, should be correct because that's what I'm using to calibrate my scale. And if they weren't correct, Frankfurt also would have blown up some guns by now and gotten their asses sued.
well, the other last week, I had the links from our CBS
Yep.
reviewed. And when I went to calibrate it, it asked for a 50 and then 100. Well, on my FX 120, I have a 100-gram calibration weight. So I use that 100-gram calibration weight. So when it asked for the 100, I put that 100 on there. That way the scales are calibrating the same weight.
Right.
So,
And seeing that specific, you were doing a test, so that
mhm,
specific thing makes sense. So,
right.
most of your quality electronic, your reloading brand scales, the check weights are going to come with them. They're going to be, I guess, good enough. It's not like,
The
yeah,
calibration weight,
yeah,
not the check
calibration weight.
weights, not the check weights.
Sorry, calibration weights are going to be good enough because they're obviously providing these to calibrate it for you to throw a powder charge. And if they're wrong, like really wrong, you're talking serious lawsuits and end of business.
Right.
Because first off, if their scale's off, not only are they going to get sued, everybody's going to find out about it, and nobody's going to buy that company's products. So
Yeah.
hexafluoride just kind of stated my point. He said Lee's scale had me breaking down my first hand loads after finding I neither read nor calibrated it correctly. Exactly.
Mhm.
So if you buy a Lee kit, take the scale, leave it in the box, and set it on a shelf somewhere as a collector's item. Do not use it. Buy a different scale.
That's
And
what
I
they
love
make a.
Lee. I
That's what.
absolutely love Lee.
That's why
Um,
they make a circular file.
yes. Oh, it's fun to look at every once in a while. So,
But go out.
hi.
I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna be against a balance beam, as long as you have a set of check weights to go along with it.
Right.
Um, there are a number of good scales out there that will work. A lot of good dispensers out there that will work if you check them. Okay. And if you find they don't work with your check weights for get rid of it. Go to send it back to the manufacturer, whatever, and buy something different.
If you buy a used balance beam scale, and what we're saying is balance beam scale. Let me actually show you. It's the reason it is called a balance beam is because that's literally what it is. So, um, I'm just putting this together quick and then holding it up. So,
Hi, Chris.
by the way, hi Chris, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
So, this is a balance beam scale. So, um, it's not a weighing device. It's a balancing device. So, what you do is you put your powder charge in here, and then you adjust your weights until it balances. So there's a lot of these different ones out there. There's good ones, there's cheap ones. Um, I honestly will say any of the ones from RCBS, even the new ones, are actually really good quality, and I could honestly recommend them without a problem. I don't have a problem recommending them. Now, the one thing you need to do is, make sure that they're actually accurate. And if they're not, most of the companies out there are really good about um, working with you. Like I bought an old Redding. Excuse me. I bought an old Redding because I like collecting old reloading equipment, and it didn't come with the pan and the balance. So I called up Redding. They sent them to me. Now, if I wanted to, I could have sent that scale to Redding, and they would have gone through and set it all up and balanced it for me. Most of the companies are like that. Most of the companies are pretty good customer service, and they'll help replace parts. Sometimes there's a cost, sometimes there isn't. But on especially on the scales and stuff, they're definitely willing to work with you to help get that operating correctly. So,
Their liabilities on the line.
yep. So,
So they're gonna take the time to work with you. Um, electronic scales are limited by their warranty.
correct. Actually, as far as electronic scales go, the only one I've seen, I'm not talking about scale dispenser combos like the IntelliDropper or the ChargeMaster Link or the ChargeMaster Supreme or anything like that. So Paul Loud says I've used a couple different scales. My least favorite balance beam was the Reading number 2. They're a little bit cantankerous, so and they're hard to read. That's the one where Paul's trick is really important. So what Paul suggested is on the scale part, not the balance part, because you'll throw the weight off. Taking a piece of material and finding the zero and sticking it out farther. Paul, I think you said you use a copper wire.
I use a piece of copper wire and a piece of Scotch tape. I put the Scotch tape on the scale part itself, not the balance beam, but on the scale itself, so it overhangs the
beam without touching
beam
it.
Without touching it, and so you can watch, and it comes right in when it comes into alignment. It'll come into you can see it easily.
Is copper magnetic?
No.
That's why you use copper, kids, because Some of them are balance beam. By the way, the Reading number 2, also one of the other issues with it, I think, is it's hydraulically dampened, not magnetically dampened.
Oil
If I
dampened.
remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yep.
So that's the other issue. So Chris came up with a good idea for your least safety scales. Set them on fire. If normal stuff doesn't work, get a better flamethrower. Because everything's flammable with the right flamethrower.
Yep.
And enough oxygen.
And I can get those from a distributor, just saying.
So, oh, Paul, you just screw it down, for crying out loud. He said the base is messed up. Whoever designed it with 3 feet needs to be slapped. I've never had that problem with it. Maybe it's because you're from Maine. A little tilted out there.
State leans off to the side,
It
wants to
does.
fall off.
Unfortunately, California doesn't. I wish it would. Dang it. Anyway, so scales important. Yeah, consistent, and I will put consistent scale.
I am not happy with a lot of electronic scales that you can go out and buy for $30 or $40 that
No, most of them are garbage. The only
Right.
one I've seen that's good, and I still haven't gotten around to buying it, is the one from Frankfurt Arsenal. It's $40. They actually rebrand it for Range Max too, which is Bass Pro's private name. But it's literally the same scale. One of these days I got to remember to actually buy it and test it, because it's actually pretty good. The only other one I would recommend is this little beastie here. This is National Metallic. This was on Amazon. I'm really impressed. They had a deal running on it where it was on sale, and one of the guys put it in the Discord chat, and so I don't know, 6 or 7 of us bought it, and it's actually very consistent. So you can now, most of your electronic scales like that, you cannot trickle.
No.
You put your powder charge on, you can trickle it, but what you need to do is you need to remove that powder charge, let the scale reset, and then put that powder charge back on, because it does not have the ability to calculate the added weight correctly. Sometimes it'll do it, but there's no guarantee it's correct. So do not buy the Hornady electronic scales. They're garbage, in my personal opinion.
What he's trying to say is they're strain gauge scales. Okay, they use a strain gauge on them, and a strain gauge has a little computer program in there that wants to stay at 0. So as you start to add in a 7/1000th of a pound, at a time, trickle in, you're sitting there going, and said, no, this is atmosphere, this is something else. No, we're gonna maintain where we're at right now until we get a large enough amount to start to move the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Better scales, the kind that a hand loader would use, are magnetic force resonance scales, and they cost a whole lot more money. So you're into the $600 plus range when you start getting into that. So
Okay, so far for reloaders, accurate press, good die is made correctly and accurate to your firearm, consistent scale or balance beam.
Right. Priming system.
Yeah. Good hand primer.
A good hand primer, or
on press.
On
No.
press. Well, no, some of the press ones are pretty
I
good.
suppose.
You get the if you spent the money on a coax press, the priming system on that is a good priming system.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones on the rack chuckers, not so much. and the
Yeah.
Lees, not so much, and the Lymans, not so much.
And
So-
I'm not a fan of the Lee hand, not the Lee hand ones, but the Lee bench mounted priming
Yeah, no,
systems.
I don't like
No.
that one either. The Lee hand primers are pretty good. The newer ones, they had to redesign because people were stupid and kept blowing themselves up because they weren't paying attention. You would sit there and you'd do like TV or whatever. And what would happen if you wouldn't pay attention, you could literally try and it would, you could do it so you could actually load 2 primers at once. So when you actually went to squeeze it, all you did was blow the primers up. So what Lee did, because they're a smaller company and they don't have a lot of litigation funds, they redesigned it so it literally only allows you 1 primer at a time. There's actually a gate. So what people don't like about this is now you have to learn the correct angle to hold it at, where the older one was a lot more forgiving. You could kind of twist and turn and it wasn't as specific. The newer one, you have to have it the right angle for everything to feed nice. Now, once you figure out what that angle is, that thing zips pretty good. I cranked out 50 rounds of 308 in a little under 5 minutes, and I wasn't even going that fast. It's not like I was going, so,
Yeah.
I was just priming, pulling off. If you spend a little more money, the Frankfurt Arsenal one, it's like $80, I think. It actually has the ability to control the depth.
Right.
So that's a newer feature that most of your hand primers haven't had. So it's definitely worth saving up a little bit and spending a little more because you're even though you're reloading, you're getting consistent. Hi, Jim.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, Jim.
Paul, Chris.
Yep.
So, Chris, what did you grab?
There we go.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
one thing that's we didn't mention that Paul Loud brought up on the basic electronic scales, a lot of those have a shut off timer. So that's the other problem you run into is now if you're trying to trickle, they'll shut off. But now that you can't trickle on the scale and you need to actually trickle a little bit, pull it off, put it back on, and so on and so forth, you shouldn't have that problem. So some of them, like the one I showed off, actually are wall power, 110. So I don't have that problem. But anyway. So Jim, we're talking about reloading versus hand loading. We've covered scale, we've covered presses, we've covered dies, we've covered scales. We're talking about priming systems specifically for reloading, not hand loading right now. We talked a little bit about the Lees and stuff. So Paul Loud mentioned in the chat RCBS automatic bench primer. That one's, a nice bench primer. We talked about the Lee bench primer is not very good, but the Lee hand primer is. Chris, were you going to show that off?
Yeah. So I think this is what you're talking about, Mike, right here, where the pencil's pointing that depth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's very important.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I bought one of those for the podcast and then I gave it away. And I regret giving it away. So now I've got to buy another one.
If I can do this without dumping it, but that obviously you get that's everything that comes in it with it.
Yeah. So you got your ability to change between your small primers and large primers. That's another point that most people don't know. They don't realize. Small pistol and small rifle, and then large rifle and large pistol. The large sizes are typically essentially the same diameter, and the smalls essentially are the same diameter. I mean, if you really want to get your ball micrometer out and measure it, you might be able to find a couple thousandths difference. But for all intents and purposes, they're the same size. So that's why with priming systems, you either get a small push or a large push, like most of your on bench and off bench. Push being the little anvil or whatever that you use for actually driving the primer up into the case. So
the nice thing about that Frankfurt Arsenal, all the shell holders that comes with it.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to buy them.
Nope.
You got it there. Adjustable seating depth. and it's all in one package for $80.
Yep.
You switch over to the RCBS bench mounted one.
Yeah.
You have to have shell holders. Okay. RCBS shell holders. You have to, which can get to a lot of money if you sit down at $8-9 a piece.
For the Lee, you have to have a separate. The Lee hand primer uses a different set of shell holders from the regular shell holders, so that's something there too.
Well, Forester has that bench primer too.
Yeah,
But uses the same thing as like on the actual press, so you don't have to buy shell holders for that.
Right.
that's nice. So in that, I forgot that the Frankfurt comes with the shell holders. So that's. I think if you buy the Lee and you buy the $20 shell holders, you're almost the same price as the Frankfurt. So you might as well just get the Frankfurt.
Plus, you get better accuracy.
Right. Because now you can dial it in.
Right.
So.
And once you get used to it, you can definitely feel if a primer doesn't go in right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, Jim, that too. Sitting there doing something while you're priming cases, you can tell if it's not going right.
That's right.
So
I've seeded a couple primers out of the way. I know exactly what you're talking about. Particularly if they try to go in sideways.
Yep. So
yeah,
you lose a primer, but you don't lose a case when that happens.
Yep. Okay, so we got press, dies, scale or powder weighing system, I should say, priming system.
May I say something?
Absolutely.
When you talk about hand loading versus reloading,
yep,
you better be prepared to bring out your checkbook and dig deep into it.
Yep.
Because that RCBS bench priming system is great. Like Paul said, I don't know what the machine actually costs, $90 to $130, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yep, about $130. And,
all right. Like you said, $9 to $10 per shell holder, per cartridge. Right. Sure, you could use 308, 270, 30-06, 25-06, 257 Roberts. I could go on one shell holder, but the point is, each time you change the style, like you go from 30-30 to 308, there's two shell holders right there. 223, that's a third shell holder.
Yep.
All right, we're already up invested of $30 to $35 in shell holders alone.
Yep.
That's the thing. When you're going to hand load, start paying.
So, well, even if you're buying the bench primer for reloading for the hand relief, you're still, it's still the cost. So
as you get older, though, you find that the bench primer is nice because this doesn't work as well anymore.
Yeah, you get to the point where you start getting to the
right.
Yeah, I've done it.
Where it gets to be a detriment because you can't consistently apply that pressure. That's where the bench primers or the on press priming comes in handier. So
if you're an older person, look at it. Either stick with the one on a coax or something like that. Even Forester makes their bench mounted priming system. It's a little different, but it's still a nice system to work with, and it's a very accurate and well-made system. So, but when you get to the hand loading part, you want more accuracy. So then you start spending money on priming systems.
Yep.
So on to the next part. The other part of reloading is something to dispense powder with.
I have an RCBS Uniflow. It's all I've ever used.
Okay.
It's a very good powder measure. But I also know for a fact there are more accurate, more consistent powder measures out there. When one is manufactured, sold by a guy that I think the other world of, Robin Sharp. I think the world of that gentleman. And he runs Reading Reloading Product. He runs Reading Reloading Products Incorporated. and I wish I could afford to buy his, but right now, no. Anyway, the point is, I do thank you, Paul Loud. I do appreciate that, and I just don't see the need for the second powder measure when I can go 3 to 5/10 of a grain under my designated load and then trickle up to it.
Well, the other thing,
I'm a cheap guy, but I'm also a machinist. I made my own trickler. I got a base about 5 inches thick, 5 inches diameter, about 3/4 inch wide. I put 2 holes in it, put a piece of steel on top of it, bored out bored it out, and away. I've been very happy with it ever since.
well, the other thing is using a Uniflow or the any drum type powder measure dispenser, not measure. It's a dispenser. Is how you use it. In other words,
That's right.
If you just random click up on it, click down, click up, harder on this one and click down, you're going to get a variety of powder charges.
That's reloading, Paul.
That's reloading. Yeah, that's reloading. You're just going to have to, click up, click down, and you learn to get in a good rhythm, and you'll be accurate. You'll still be off.
That's the thing. You're right about accurate, but you won't be precise.
No.
Okay, and that's where I trickle up to make it precise. That's where I trickle up to the designated load.
Right.
Desired load.
Not a problem. And you also use a mechanical balance beam.
Yep. And this is one of the best comments I've seen yet from Mr. Laud. And he says, when you're throwing a powder, what you're throwing a powder makes a huge difference too. The man is right. Something like WW296, or the HP38, it's a ball powder. That stuff you can't throw a bad charge. Almost. But if you go to some of the charcoal stuff like IMR 4831, and you're throwing gravel in your powder measure. Man, you that's one charge you can't throw without cutting a couple kernels of powder.
The other problem is flake powders in those kind of measures. Okay. They have a hard time because they settle differently every time. Yeah, when you're loading Lincoln logs, 4831, 7228, you're dealing with some big stuff. H1000, you're going to be dealing with loads that definitely have to be trickled up to get where you want as a reloader. Okay,
that's right.
We're not, whereas as we're going down, the next is our seating dies. We've already talked about dies. A good bullet for what you're designed for, and being able a couple of things, having a dial caliper to be able to set your bullet into a measurement. And I'm going to go really off the wall here, and a Hornady gauge to see where the lands start on your in your barrel. So you'll have a cartridge where it works, and and the tool itself to push it through, so you can find out where the lands start on your gun, so you can come back from that, so you're not forcing the bullet into the lands, which could cause problems of when you go to eject the round, and the round dumps all the powder out, and as the bullet sticks into the barrel.
I've done that,
and I think we've all done that.
We've all cursed like a sailor too. But anyway, no, the Hornady kit you're talking about is nice. But I also went with the other way, the other direction with the reloading equipment manufacturer I also like, but I've never actually been to their site. And that was the Forster datum dial kit. It measures on the bullet node drive set just as like the Hornady does.
Right. So you can. The nice thing about the datum dial kit is you're set for multiple bullets. Where with the Hornady, you have to buy each individual one. And Sinclair does the same thing. You can buy a Sinclair so they can fit. You can also be a cheat, and you can take a fired case and resize it, and then cut 3 thin cuts in the neck so it holds the bullet, and then you can push the bullet in gently with your bolt and close it, and then come back and remove it, and you should be at the lands then with that. And you can come back then and say, I'm going to come back just off the point of the bullet. You can come back 10 thousandths or so, and you can get yourself your jump.
I know the technique you're talking about. I like the datum dial kit much better. That way, don't scrap a case because of you have to use a jeweler's saw or something of that nature to cut that brass vertically, longitudinally, with the axis of the case.
Right.
Case neck, I should say. When you do that, you are scrapping a case. When you're hand loading, you're not going to worry too much about scrapping one case. But the point is, there are people out there that don't have that jeweler's handsaw. And how else would you split it off? Okay. But the point is, it's a lot of work, and a lot of people don't want to fiddle like that.
Oh, I agree.
I didn't. I just went with the datum dial.
Yeah,
I don't see you fiddling like that, Paul, but it is a viable technique. I will give you that, sir.
I have done it, and I still do it. I will do it when I get a new barrel put on. I will fire around in it, and then I will take and sacrifice the case, so I know exactly where I'm at. Doesn't matter to me. One case is one case. Call it $1. Okay, it's gone.
The thing is too, when you buy most brass, whether it's Starling, they always throw a couple extra pieces in there for you for probably that precise reason, because they know you're going to sacrifice one or two.
So we've gotten down to seeding our bullets, and we're basically ready to we're reloading. So
we've got accurate press, good knives made correctly and accurate to your firearm, consistent scalar balance beam, good priming system.
Powder dispenser, something like a Uniflow or something like that. It's even for people they can buy. This is one of the ones where Lee comes out pretty good because they use a polymer wipe on their powder dispenser, and it doesn't cut the granules like a Uniflow or one. So that's cheap. They're $50 or so. So they're all within. And a couple of little things that they need is case blocks, something to hold the cases. So you don't drop them over as you're charging the cases, and something to put the ammunition in when you're done. MTM boxes.
Yep, that's good for hand loading and reloading. MTM boxes. I got 2 or 3 dozen of them around here.
Case trimming.
Case trimming.
Case trimming. If you're the beginning reloader, go out and buy a Forester case trimmer. Okay.
So I agree with my friend Mr. Mr. Nelson. Listen to the man. He knows what he's talking about.
Yep. Save your money honestly and buy one of the
Buy once, cry once.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if you absolutely have to, if it's only one, so if it's only one cartridge, Paul.
If it's only one cartridge you're loading for, buy a lead. Okay, you can sit down and you can get the holder and the cutter and the ball to go with it, or you can.
You
Do
get
they
the
still
drill
make
attachment.
the drill attachment, or do they make the old zip thing still?
Yeah, they still make the zip. Or I don't recommend a World's Finest trimmer because if you're going to spend that much money, you might as well just buy the
Forester.
Buy the Forester. So, but yeah, just the Lee Basic one is pretty accurate. Basically, it's a cutter with a case length gauge. I don't even know what
Built into it. I mean,
yeah.
it's all it is a cutter. It's got a little.
It's just
yeah,
done. Yeah,
and
if you can all sorts of different ways to power it and stuff like that too. So
yeah, and
well,
worst
the
case,
thing is
$30.
that we're not talking about is how versatile the Forester trimmer is. You can turn your case next on it. You can ream the brass.
But we're only reloading. We're not hand loading, Jim.
Right. But
so none of that matters.
We did say buy once, cry once.
But none of that matters because we're reloading. We're not hand loading.
And the other thing is that we sit down and you need a deburring tool.
Did he freeze?
Hello.
He froze.
Yeah, he froze. A cheap
or he
deburring
died
tool.
and rigor mortis set in real quick.
Ah, well.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Anyway,
you froze there, Jim.
The only time as a reloader would I tell somebody to buy a Little Crow Gunworks trimmer is if all they're reloading is 223 for their AR.
Yep.
Okay. If that's all you're reloading for, buy the Little Crow. Okay.
Yep. But yeah, you get the little Lee set up.
I would dare. Here we go.
Anyway, Jim keeps freezing.
So.
Am
I back on?
Yeah.
Yeah, just turn your camera off, Jim.
You're running out of bandwidth there, Jim.
And he's gone.
Okay.
Anyway, so I think that about covers it for reloading. So now let's dive in the rabbit hole.
Uh-oh. Everybody watching now, get your boots on. Okay. You know, take your wallet, put your wallet in the other room in your wife's hands.
Yep.
All right.
Get your wife out of the room.
Yep. Get your wife.
Unless your wife is the reloader, then you need to leave the room.
Yeah. So
STLA or STL Ammo Man said any reloader needs a Dylan calendar on the wall. I can take it or leave it. I've got one somewhere, but so all right. So the difference between reloading. Jim, did you freeze again? Blink if you can hear us, Jim.
I don't think.
Turn your camera off.
I don't know. What?
Said your video keeps freezing. Turn your camera off.
Do that.
anyhow, we're going to get into hand loading, and we're going to just hand load for one gun. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One long gun. This is it. And so the first thing we're going to start with is good brass. All right.
Good to great brass.
Good brass. All right. You're going to figure on at least $1 to $1.50 per case. So
you're talking Peterson now.
Peterson, Alpha, Lapua,
Caroline.
you know, that's what we're looking at. You're gonna, you know, this is gold to you because it's gonna cost you $150 to maybe $350 for 100 pieces of brass. You know, some of those, and even more. You know, if you're shooting a 300 PRC, there, what are cases now, Chris, for
probably 250?
I think I just bought 100 and it was 2 something if I remember correctly.
So there you go. You know, $275
Ouch.
for 100 cases.
And that was Atlas Development Group brass.
And then we're going to sit down and we're going to work on the brass to get it perfect. We're going to sit down, we're going to take our ball micrometer and we're going to go around the case necks and check all the case necks to make sure that they are the same. If not, and they probably won't be, is we will take a neck turning tool, size the case first, and we'll get to this, expand the case, and then put in a neck turning tool and turn the neck to get it to where we think it has to be, depending upon your rifle's chamber and other things, and where the case is as far as the thickness of the neck. Average is 14 to 16 thousandths on most brass, and we're going to want it somewhere about 13 to 12 thousandths as far as the brass thickness. So we're going to turn that down. We're going to use something like K&M, or if you really have money, you can go out and buy an Autodod, which actually cuts the neck from the inside and the outside. It's like a CNC machine for turning case necks.
Poor Jim keeps having internet problems. So I missed that last part because I was trying to get her over here so she quit whining. You were talking about
Autodod. It's a CNC machine for turning case necks.
Okay.
Because even though we're buying expensive brass, that means the brass is really good. It's consistent.
Yeah. So how much does that thing cost?
$3,000.
It's not too bad for.
No.
So, I think for those who are just joining us or maybe forgot, so hand loading is not necessarily spending ridiculously exorbitant amounts of money. I mean, you can if you have the funds, but it is a lot of steps,
labor intensive,
to get to that loaded cartridge. There is an incredible amount of steps that you want to do. And having a reloading partner like a dog doesn't help. She's cute though.
And hey, Paul, just to give you an idea what good brass is going for, I just bought some 7 PRC from Graf, and for a box of 250, it costs $400 plus shipping.
That's not bad.
No, it's about $160, I think, per. I put the stuff in the host chat.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, that's not bad at all for that.
No.
So I figured 7 was going to be at least 2 a pop. So, with your brass, $1 to $1.50 for most of your normal cartridges. Any of the newer boutique cartridges, if you can get it under 2, well, that's a really good deal. So, like he said, $1.60 a piece. That's a really good deal. Always check Graf and Sons for brass, because I don't know how they do it, but they seem to have just some. First off, they have a lot in stock. Okay, gang. And second, they have amazing prices. I mean, there's a lot of places. If you do to AmmoSeek, AmmoSeek.com is something that everybody should have bookmarked on their browser. Think of it like Travelocity but for ammo and reloading components. You can search primers and brass and bullets
and powder
and powder.
and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So, and it breaks it down by cost per piece. It includes your shipping costs and stuff. And hi, Gracie. Thank you. I love you too. If you're gonna keep kissing me, you're gonna get down. This is the problem with dachshunds. They love to sneak kisses. And yeah, so hi. Yes, I told on you. Yes, I ratted you out to everybody that you love to give kisses. What do you think of that? Oh, you missed. Anyway, so I mean that's it's labor intensive. It's a lot of processes that you don't do when you're reloading because you're not trying to make a difference. Most of the stuff you're going to do when you're hand loading first is done with the forethought that you're actually a good enough shooter to make a difference. Okay, kids? So if you're hand loading, you better be shooting. That means taking your 22 out with some decent ammo and popping 1,000 rounds a month. Okay, kids? At least. Whether that's a 22 rifle or 22 handgun, I don't care, but you're putting rounds down range. Because if you can't shoot, all the rest of this doesn't make a dang bit of difference. So, you're talking about doing things that at 100 yards make the difference between a ragged hole or a clean hole and a 4-inch, a 1-inch group. Okay, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about hand loading. Reloading, if you get that 1-inch group, hey, that's damn good. Okay, kids. Hand loading, you want a clean hole. If you're shooting a 308, you want a hole that's 0.308 when you fold the paper back in.
For 5 shots.
For 5 shots, not 1 shot, 5 shots. Okay. And
everything through one hole.
Right. So, and part of the hand loading is getting the platform good enough to be able to do that too. Most of the people that listen to this podcast, and probably most of the people that pull a trigger in this country and around the world, the firearm they're using shoots better than they do. Period. My firearms shoot better than I do. I guarantee it.
But we have people here. We do have people here.
Yeah.
Who are looking for that 1/4 inch, the 3/8 inch
right
cartridge, okay, and are working hard to shoot that way.
I'm just letting everybody know that all of the steps we're going to talk about, all of the stuff we're talking about, doesn't mean squat if the idiot behind the trigger can't do their job. So that's kind of the important thing is if you're going to go down the hand loading road, you're going to find out really quick if you can't shoot because you did this and now your loads aren't working as well. And you did this and you didn't work, or you've got a flyer all the time. Handguns, you can kind of eliminate some of it because you can lock the dang thing down in a ransom rest and it eliminates the whole dang thing. Okay, kids? Rifles to a point. But the problem is you lock down your rifles, you're going to blow up your scopes. Okay.
Or ruin stocks or stuff like that. Yeah.
You're gonna break things if you lock them down. That's the nice thing about a ransom rest. The way it's designed that it locks the pistol in and it brings the pistol back to the exact same spot every single friggin' time without damaging the firearm. They don't make anything like that for rifles because you can't. That's why lead sleds are only for initial sight in, then you get that rifle out of there. They need to move with that recoil because if you don't, like I said, you break scopes, you break stocks, you crush stocks. So, there's a whole bunch of stuff on the firearm and scope stuff. We're not going into that. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Speaking of firearms, Anderson Manufacturing will be here next week.
Oh, nice.
Going to talk about some of their stuff. That's right. We're going to have Kyle from Poverty Pony on. And so he's going to come on and he's going to talk about a bunch of stuff. And one of the things I want to have him talk about is the thing they just launched, which is important for this topic. I don't know how they did it, but they got a hold of Anderson started their own custom shop now. They're working on a bolt action, which is being delayed because they realize that they can't screw it up. Okay, kids? They're working on it, so it's right. Originally, this was supposed to launch NRA show back in, whenever it was. And it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. And I've been talking with Kyle back and forth because we want to have him on to talk about that. But we also wanted to have him talk about just Anderson manufacturing as a whole. And a lot of people don't realize, and we'll never know, but Anderson makes a lot of AR parts for a lot of companies that are rebranded. Okay. And if you pay attention to what you're doing, yeah, sometimes with an Anderson upper and lower, there's a space, be honest. But I don't know. I've built a couple ARs with Anderson stuff and I've gotten good results. So, but not to say you can't build better with better stuff. But so we're going to have them on talk about their stuff, what they've got going on, and their custom shop, and one of the things that they added to their custom shop that's going to surprise a lot of people. So, so we've got good brass.
We have the tools to work the brass to make it uniform.
Yep.
Neck turning, primer pocket reaming, flash hole deburring, trimmers that work off the shoulder, custom dies.
Why is that important?
Why is that important? Well, because the shoulder can be held to exact tolerances. And the number of cartridges that we're going to deal with here, we're looking at the time we're doing it, we're looking at trimming the brass, cutting the chamfer, and deburring the case all at one time. Okay, not separate steps. We want to do it all at one time. No, we handle it once to make sure, but we have the shoulders set back with our dies specifically to the same length every time, held to the 5/10,000ths between our press and our custom dies that we're going to get. And the custom dies are going to be something like Short Action Custom, Eric Cortina, Widden. There's a number of places. Even the gunsmith who puts the barrel on your gun can make you up a set of dies with the proper chamber. Okay. So that's what we're looking for there. It's consistent. The more consistent we can make the brass, the more consistent we can be in shooting the gun.
So hand loading simplified is we are eliminating as many variables as we possibly can. Okay, that's the basic premise of hand loading. Yeah. Yep. So we want our goal is concentricity, uniformity, and consistency. That's the three goals. So good brass to start with.
Good brass. Good bullets.
Just because you spend money on brass doesn't mean you're not going to have to uniform the pockets, deburr the flash holes,
cut the necks,
trim the necks.
Yeah.
Trim the case length. So
Yep.
typically you shouldn't have to on your better brass, but don't assume. I know a couple people that even when they buy a Peterson or Lapua, the first thing they do is they resize it and trim it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing they do when they get brand new brass, no matter who made it.
Yeah.
So,
I ran 200. I bought 200 308 small primer cases, and I did an episode here where I measured every part of the brass.
Yep.
And then took and turned the case necks and even weighed how much the difference in the brass was between the first time when I first got it and then the second time, and came up with the standard deviation and the extreme spread differences that we ran into it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were issues, okay, and the turn brass came out really nice, and we're still working on some loads for it, and we'll get those out soon. But
so running scissors said, and would you agree if bumping two separate manufacturers of brass of the same caliber, check your die when moving to the next manufacturer? And he says,
Yeah.
ask me how I know. Ha.
Yeah.
So what he's talking about is he's talking about bumping back a shoulder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if it's not the same lot, check it. Because
It's going to be indifferent.
Yeah,
it's going to be different.
Because it's different metallurgy, so it acts differently to the punches. Brass isn't cast; it's punched. So they start out with little brass cups, and then they punch it and punch it and punch it and punch it, punch it until you get the design you need. So
right.
That's a lot of working. And if your metallurgy is different, your components, brass is an alloy. So there's different components that go into it. And if the component mix, even if the component mix is the exact same every single time, there's no guarantee that your metallurgy is going to be same lot to lot. So even if you can guarantee that, you've got 92% of one item and 7% of the other item and 1% of the other item. How do you like that? I did math on the fly. Anyway, there's no guarantee it's going to mix the same every single time. And that's the problem. Without, making, they could do it. They really could. But now you're talking $25 a piece of brass. It's not worth it. Nobody's going to pay that. Even bench rest shooters, nobody's going to pay that much. So,
well, the thing about a bench rest shooter, he's going to sit down and he's going to buy 200 pieces of brass.
Yep.
And he's going to fix 20 of them or 30. Mm-hmm. Okay. Out of the 200 pieces, he's going to put the rest aside, and he's going to work on those until he gets them exactly 100% perfect. And then he's going to shoot those. And he shoots, remember, he just shoots 5 shots at a time. So he's going to shoot 5 shots out of that, out of 5 pieces of brass, take that off to the side and clean it, get it ready for the next shoot that he has, and reuse the same brass. Mm-hmm. He's gonna neck size it quickly. He's going to expand it, reload it, and hand load, by a hand load, using a high-end powder dispenser mm-hmm. that has been reworked to be even more high-end. In other words, there are people that will take a Harold's powder dispenser, which is a very high-end Culver style powder dispenser, and then rework it so everything is the same. So, in other words, he does after you have the load.
On that because a couple of the bench resters I've seen, once they get that, their actual dispenser at the range when they're shooting is usually a piece of brass that's been modified.
Some, yeah.
So,
but some of the
But
guys
they
will
got
sit
to
down-
that by using the expensive consistency. So
but the guys will sit down and say, hey, it's getting in the afternoon. I need to go up 1 or 2 clicks more to make my shots more consistent.
Mhm.
Okay. It's just something that happens, and they will do that. And they go, but their whole load is, I'm at 35 clicks on my measure, and that's what they'll write down on their in their book.
Yep.
So that's where we'll go. They'll test out what there's in the morning before they start shooting for match, and they'll say, "Oh, bring it back a click, or bring it back 2 clicks, or bring it forward 2 clicks." Something that they do, but their dispensers are very, very accurate and expensive. Again, Chris, you're sitting there with V4, $1,000 dispenser.
Yeah. A little over, maybe, I think. Can't remember exactly.
Plus shipping, yeah, and taxes. So, and it weighs out to what?
0.02, I think is what it was, if I remember correctly.
200th of a grain. You're sitting there going, okay, this is how close I'm measuring. 200th of a grain is about 1 granule of Varget. Okay. So if I put on a granule of 4350, it probably weighs more than the 200th of a grain. So, it might be 300th of a grain. So that's the kind of accuracy that he's looking at, to sit down and say, I'm going to be this precise in my load.
Mhm.
The same thing with priming. He's going to sit down and say, I'm going to use a Primal Rights priming system, or a Holland priming system. Something that gives him an exact measurement of how the primer is going into the case. This is all eliminating variables. The whole line is sitting there and saying, there's no difference in my powder charge. There's no difference in my bullet. There's no difference in the bullet nose. There's no difference in the case. There's no difference in how the primer is seated. Where it sits up against the lands of the, how far off of the lands it is. These are all the little variables that we sit down and we try to work out to make the gun shoot 1 hole. Custom dies, custom, they may be production dies, but they're still custom.
Yeah.
It's somebody that's not making a lot of them. You have just a lot of high end. I mean, there are die makers out there that for close to $800 will make you a 1 die.
Mm-hmm.
1 die, sizing or seating. You can sit down and say, I'm going to spend $1,600 on getting a set of dies for my rifle.
Yep. So for tools to uniform the brass, we've got neck turning, brass trimming, primer pocket uniform, flash hole deburr.
Yep.
I'm not including anything that has to deal with dies. So
yeah,
custom dies.
Right.
So
the custom dies, you're going to probably go with a bushing type die from Short Action Customs. Then you're going to use an expanding mandrel, again from Short Action Customs or 21st Century or Porter's Precision Products. Any of those three produce good expanding mandrels. Expanding mandrels is used to set your final neck tension on your gun. That's, then we're going to get to the powder dispensing. Powder dispensing, we're looking at a V4 or a custom Culver's type measure, and you're not going to be much different in price wise. A good Culver.
Are we looking probably pretty much digital for powder dispensing?
Pretty much digital for powder dispensing, unless you're going to spend $300 to $500 to purchase a Harold's powder dispenser, and then having a custom guy rework it for another $200 to $300. So they're close in money that way.
So you might as well just buy
the electronic. Or if you really have the money.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, how we doing, guys? Sorry I'm late.
What's your shirt say?
Bleed blue, huh? Okay.
Dang it! Now I gotta get my Red Wings hat.
Now I go get my Bruins stuff.
Oh,
You're
gosh.
a Bruins fan?
Oh no!
What
I grew up
the
in
ad?
Maine.
Oh, I suppose.
Hmm.
Better than Bruins than one of the Canada teams.
I'm shocked he wasn't like a.
Well, he could have been a Hartford
Montreal.
Whalers fan.
That's true.
So I guess it's worse. I guess it could be worse. Or, actually, what could be worse? He could be a Blackhawks fan.
Oh yes.
Love you, Paul.
Yep.
Paul Loud wants to know who reworks Harold Precision Powder Measure.
I got a guy. I have to look him up, but there's a couple of guys that rework them. Okay, just to make them more precise.
Yeah,
and they're not cheap. They're, like I say, they're $200 to $300 more just to rework a Harold.
you might as what is it you've got?
I have a super trickler, and Chris has got a V4, and the thing that we're missing is a Prometheus.
Yeah.
So
Ben Chaddick said Prometheus for powder measure if your pockets have no bottom.
right.
So
because you're looking 35 to 5. You can lease one for $3,500.
Yeah, we were looking at it the other day.
Or you can buy one for $5. So, there's that. We were looking at. I was looking at what it would take to make one, and it's just too much money. But yeah, it's do I regret the super trickler? Yeah, kind of. I'm not completely happy with
Super Trickler. Isn't that the one you were gonna get, Chris, and then bailed on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna get that. I mean, watching the site on Facebook, there's a lot of people because it seems like it takes a lot of work to get it to work, but once it's working, it works great. But it seems like the learning curve, and I just don't have the time to start dealing with updating firmware left and right. It seems like.
Yeah. Paul, what'd you do with the one you used to have?
The V3 sold it.
Okay.
Sold it. Now for the V4, there's a guy that's making a a trickler that is not dependent upon the tube like you see with that. That's more along the lines of the Prometheus, where it actually has a disc that picks up the powder and actually drops the powder in kernel at a time. Now it will spin at high speed and then it will slow down, but it is a disc and it is got actual notches in it to pick up powder at a kernel at a time to drop into the V4, and he's going to see if he can come up with the software to make it work with the super trickler, which is the issues that I see with them are the if you're spending that kind of money and it's dropping within two hundredths of a grain every time, you want it to be even more precise.
Okay, so powder dispenser we've got covered now. What about the press? I mean, are there any presses we're looking at that we should exclude, or types of presses?
Boy, it really, I don't think there's a type of press. I mean, a lot of people are using 650s to prep brass. Okay, I mean to do the sizing and getting the brass prepped. There's been a move to switch from the using a press to seat bullets to going to electronic means of seating bullets, or going with just strictly a inline bullet seater and seating bullets that way. The amp press is the electronic way, where it actually measures the force of the bullet seating. So you can get you get a graph as you're seating bullets, so you can see how much force is being applied to seat each bullet. And if you get an outflyer or something like that, you can cull that one right away and put it aside, use it for blow-offs or whatever. Century 21 makes a hydraulic force measuring arbor press that is a little cheaper, being about $350 versus the $1,200 for the amp seating press, which does not, both of them don't include the straight line seating dies from Wilson or other manufacturers. Because those are going to run you another $100 to $150 per cartridge. We didn't touch bullets. What do you do with bullets? Well, we can sit down and we can look at the nose of the bullet and sit down and say, well, that one doesn't look too good, or that one looks really good, and we can fix them. We can actually trim them, repoint them, and actually increase the BC on the bullet by a few points. Again, it's having the press to do the work, and spending the $450 in dies and punches and trimmers to just fix our bullets.
So with brass prep, one of the things we kind of forgot to is case capacity consistency, sorting. So one of the things with hand loading is you're sorting. You're sorting bullets by various statistics, and you're sorting cases by case capacity. If you really are going down the rabbit hole, you want you know you want your cases to
But
be close.
we bought them by the lot. Okay, so I'm going to sit down and say, that do I want to measure volume? I could, but I'm buying by the lot. I'm not going to see a whole lot of difference because I've already gone through and checked that lot of brass as far as weighing the cases, checking the neck thicknesses, looking at seeing where the anomalies are. If I'm going through a neck and I'm sitting there I'm going 15, 15, 15, all of a sudden here's an 18. Okay, it's coming one side of it's an 18. That whole piece of brass is a piece of shit. All right, because that tells me that when it was formed in the die, that one side was heavier all the way through, even through to the neck. All right, so that one would go off to the side. Do I see that with Lapua, Peterson? No, really. You want to see it? Give me some Winchester, or better yet, give me some Remington. There you go. Then you're going to find some really interesting pieces of brass. And then I would, yes, definitely do case capacity then.
Okay.
There's a reason we spent the $2 or $1.65 a piece of brass.
Yeah. For bullets.
Yes.
What are we looking for?
What are we doing with them?
Well, we're hand loading.
Okay. So we're target shooting? Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Competition.
We're target shooting. So now we're going to look at a bullet that is going to meet the needs of how far we're shooting. And it's going to have a proper jacket and form factor with a high enough BC to make a difference. And you're going to be looking at the 400s to the 600s in G1 ballistics. Depending upon the caliber you shoot, you may look at custom bullet manufacturers and look to see how they are, because most of them are going to be a little bit more accurate than your large manufacturers of bullets. As much as I hate to say it, or you're going to go with a turn bullet, a Swiss screw machine turn bullet. Expensive. Most bullets you're going to find somewhere in the $450 to $500 per 500. Even more for Swiss screw machine turn bullets.
What are we getting for our money?
You're getting is if it's a jacketed bullet, you're getting jackets that have been measured, okay, and quality controlled. You're getting the alloy, the lead alloy that goes into it, that again is quality controlled, and you're getting a custom die, bullet die and a manufacturer that is spending time to produce one bullet at a time and not watching a press knock out, 500 bullets in a minute. The things are just going to be a little bit better. They're just
So your diameter is going to be consistent. Your location of your ogive, your distance from your ogive to your nose and your ogive to your heel is going to be consistent, bullet to bullet.
Bullet points are going to be better. Okay.
Yep.
If it's a bow tail bullet, you're going to have a better bow tail on it. It
More
may
consistent.
it may be a different type of bow tail. It may be a rebated bow tail.
Okay.
Okay. Which has some benefits to a versus a standard bow tail.
Mhm.
Rebated bow tail has a area for the powder to push on that is not trying to be forced in between the lands and grooves and the bullet itself. So you're not getting
Your bow tail staying
hit.
consistent.
Right. Your bow tail is staying more consistent.
You're not
And
deforming it with your powder charge.
right. Your powder is not trying to, the gases are not trying to cut away the copper at the edge of the bullet.
Yeah.
And there have been some studies done where they have actually done high-speed photography of the bullet exiting the muzzle and seen a curl come off of one of the lands, and it causes bullet inconsistency then going downrange. Little burr, if you want to call it right, So they're coming out with a lot more information for a hand loader to deal with and to produce a better bullet for us.
Okay. So
Odor. One small thing you said is missing is discussion. You only get so far, all this fancy stuff, if your rifle setup is not to its highest peak. Also custom built, yes. Originally we opened up with this for a hand loader. He is sitting there looking at brass, bullets, and barrels. Okay. Those are the things that he needs to make a winning combination.
So, yeah, it doesn't do any good odor if you make the most concentric ammo you possibly can if your barrel is not concentric to your chamber. So, but we kind of covered that a little bit when we started down the rabbit hole here of when I was talking about being a great shooter, or not a great shooter, but being a very good shooter, making sure you're practicing that and making sure your equipment's up to it. Yeah, you're not going to this isn't something you're going to take a Savage Axis. No offense to Savage, but you're not going to go and buy your $500 Savage Axis combo and go out and do this.
Correct.
Do you need to buy, God, what the hell's the name of the company? There's a company we've gotten a couple of rifles in for, and you're talking like 15 grand. I don't remember the name of it, but they send the whole case and everything. And
ASW.
I think it starts with a G.
Arctic Warfare.
Oh,
Systems.
Gunworks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Gunworks
Okay.
is insane.
Do you need to go out and get a Gunworks or an ASW or something like that? No. A lot of times one of the things you need to understand about firearms a lot of the higher end firearms are built to help compensate for weaknesses in the shooter. I mean, that's one of the things that people don't realize. A lot of your custom built things, all the gadgets and whiz bangs and everything else that they put on them, is to help compensate for weaknesses in the shooter. Not always, but a lot of it is.
What could be a weakness for a shooter for a regular shooter could be a real bonus for a high quality shooter.
Right.
In other words, lots of you give a great rifle to an average shooter, and he's gonna do better than he normally would.
Right.
Okay. But you give a great rifle to a great shooter, and you're gonna see
magic.
Magic is right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not saying that the custom rifles aren't worth it, because they are. So don't get me wrong on that. I mean, they are, but it's not necessarily.
It's look at guys. Not everybody can afford a custom rifle. Okay.
The hand loading is the more important part.
Right. But eventually you're going to burn out a barrel. Okay. The more you shoot, the more likely you're going to burn out a barrel. Don't sit down and say, I got to replace the whole gun because the barrel shot. If it's a good action, it's in a good stock, you can replace the barrel. And yeah, it's, a barrel is going to set you back a couple of paychecks. Okay. That you can spend, not actual paycheck itself, but your lunch money from so you don't go to McDonald's every day of the week, or whatever. You don't stop at the bar on the way home. You got $400 in a barrel. You got another $300 to have it chambered. Okay. So you got $700 for somebody to barrel it and to buy a new barrel and put a new barrel on. If he does it right and he's a good gunsmith, you're going to have a gun that's going to shoot better than when it started with the factory barrel.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If your rifle's not right, like we said, you're constant. You can spend all this effort on concentricity and consistency in your ammo, but if you're shooting it out of a rifle that the rifling is shot out in the first inch of the rifling, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Or if your barrel isn't the right twist rate for the ammo you're using.
Or you got a burr at the end of the muzzle. Okay.
Yep. You got to burn the chamber.
It's, or
it's not headspace correctly.
There's something, it just eventually a barrel is burnt and it's gone, and it's time to change it. And Chris, am I right? $400 for a barrel, $300 a chamber.
Depends on what you're getting for a barrel, though. If you're talking bark line, stuff like that, or if you're going from steel to carbon fiber wrapped, it's cut versus button. I mean, I think for an entry barrel that's a button, probably about $700, give or take, having a gunsmith spin it up. But if you're talking a cut rifle, bark line, I know one of the companies that I talked to down there in Cody, Straight Jacket Armory, you're looking at $1,000 for a carbon wrapped bark line barrel, chambered. So.
Definitely,
you could be looking at, and you could be looking at more.
Yeah,
depending on the profile you want on the barrel.
Yep, profile, and some companies will charge more money if you go if you want a 32-inch barrel for whatever reason, for whatever issue. They're going to charge you more for the additional length.
Mhm.
Yep. More steel, more cost.
Yep.
Well, not only that, but most of your rifle barrels are 22, 24 inches.
Mhm.
So if they're going to be making longer barrels, now their equipment has to be able to handle it, which means they've got more money
Mhm.
invested in being deal with it. So you got somebody that's working that willing to do 26 to 32-inch barrels. They have to have a longer, they have longer lathes or mills or whatever the hell they're using, a larger CNC to be able to accommodate that. So
Well, I think you touched on that, Mike. It depends on what that company or gunsmith is using for spinning up barrels. If they're using a CNC, that's an additional cost that they're not eating. They're probably adding a little bit extra to recoup some of that investment. Versus, if you bought a lathe from Precision Matthews or something.
yeah.
I have a gunsmith that does mine work with CNC, and he has actually reduced his prices because of the volume that he can do with it. But he does a large volume of work.
Yeah. I think it comes down to that whoever that gunsmith or company is, if they're going to add that cost, or if they're going to like you're saying, well, if I invest, 40 grand on this CNC machine, but I can put my output of barrels from say 100 a month to 300,
Right.
and have them more accurate and done properly rather than having to hand do it every time. Well, yeah, I probably wouldn't even add that cost because I know I can make up that on the volume I'll be putting out.
Yeah, he invested it the first time in a CNC for barrel chambering, and then he invested in a 5-axis for action truing and fixing actions. The 5-axis was a lot of money, but again, to fix up, to true up an action is, add an extra $400, guys. Okay. So you're sitting there going, here's a factory action. I want to true it, $400, a barrel, 400, a straight stainless steel barrel cut rifle is $400, or maybe a little more. And then another 300 to 375 to chamber it. So where are we at? $1,000, a little over $1,000. And that's basically where you're at. And at that point, I ask if it's costing me, let's say a Remington 700 action is costing me $400 or $500 buying it on the market.
Where are you finding a Remington action for that cheap right now?
PP Pacific Tool and Gauge. I can get a Remington action for about that money.
I think I know where you're going with this part there, Paul, is it worth
it? Is it worth it?
A factory action, whether Remington or whoever, having it trued versus buying, Mac Brothers or Bighorn action, or having a custom action that's already been done properly from the get-go and paying a few extra $100 and not having to worry about it just being a polished factory action.
If I have $800, $1,000, $1,100 in a bottom of the list custom action, I know it's still going to be made on a CNC machine that's going to be trued up and everything else, because their reputation is on the line for that action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what I'm looking at. Is it worth it for me to take a Remington and having it fixed, or buying one of these custom actions? And even at $1,200, $1,300 where a lot of them are sitting nowadays, it still makes sense to buy that action if I'm going to be a hand loader and if I want the best out of my guns.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's something that you have to decide on. You know, that's the thing with being a hand loader is how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go with everything. And you don't have to, and that's just you know, we talk about all these different things. You can be a hand loader and not have a V4 or a super trickler. Um, it's more. Some of it's the equipment. Some of it you absolutely have to have certain pieces of equipment to do. But a lot of it is the dedication to the work.
Mhm.
I don't
And
need an
it's
auto dod because I sit down and I have time where I can turn all my case necks and do it. I can't do the insides, but I can sure do the outsides.
Yeah.
Okay. So, is it handy to have an auto dod? Yeah, it is. Do I want to spend the money on it? No, I have the time to sit down and do a case neck and do it right.
Mhm.
So that's that's my theory as far as hand loading. I have to take into effect that, I'm 70 years old and I'm sitting there going, how many more years do I have of hand loading?
return on investment.
Right.
That's what you need to think about when you're hand loading, when you're buying equipment. Are you going to get your money back out of this? Or is it something you're going to buy and find out, well, for the level I'm at, I didn't really need that. What could I have done instead?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'm getting away from doing everything on single stage. I'm working towards doing a lot of my hand loading on a Dillon 550. Okay. So I can sit down with Armanoff tool heads and die rings and everything. And yeah, I have to change heads in between. I do 3 operations at one time. Then I go back and I got to do another 3 operations at another time. Okay. So what normally most people would use just 2 dies for, I'm using 6 dies or just about close to 6 dies. So,
yeah.
I got a body die. I got a neck die. I have a okay, Paul, get it out real quick here. Porter Precision die for my for my case neck expansion. I'm sitting there going, and then I have checking everything out and priming off the press and then going back and seating and everything and powder charging with my super trickler and moving on with custom Forester die to seat my bullets and finish up from there. So cost wise, you're talking probably about $1,000 is just in press to do 1 caliber with a brand new 550C.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's the thing is people have taken time to make it so you can do that on a 550.
Right.
20 years ago, somebody would have thought about doing custom, doing high end hand loading on a progressive. No, but it's available.
There's people that are doing it on a 650. Okay.
Yeah. Who was it we were talking? Oh, I think it was Robin actually. When we had Robin Sharpless on one time, he was talking about the South African team came over to do the shoot, and they couldn't bring their ammo, so they had to reload everything here. So they were loading on 650s, and it was going well. So, but so Ben Chaddock said he wants to go as far down that rabbit hole as his shovel will take him.
He's digging a deep hole as it is.
Dude, I've seen his shovel.
He doesn't have a shovel. He's got an excavator.
Yeah.
Mister, I have an ADOD.
I'm still waiting for him to get the case feeder going for his amp annealer. He hasn't done that yet.
So, so the guys are listing quite a few different American companies for custom rifle actions, just so you know, in the chat. So if you check that out, so
Yep.
and another thing, part of that is an optic.
Oh wow.
That's a
going
rabbit
down
hole in itself.
We're not going down the hole. So
running with scissors, yes. Forester shoulder bump dies, yes. But I use a Redding body die. Okay, so Redding body die, and then a shoulder bump die. So, and that's with a bushing. So that's part of the 3-step process of sizing the case.
So yeah, definitely. Another important thing is the right powder, not just the powder you can get your hands on.
Oof. Oof. That is so hard to do nowadays.
It's getting better.
And primers. Primers.
Yep.
I mean,
I mean, primers goes without saying. Learn what the difference is between the primers and test them out. You may find out that for whatever you're doing with the cartridge you're doing and the powder you're doing, that a standard primer works. You don't need a match, or you don't need a bench rest. That type of thing. You're consistent enough.
Sometimes the bench rest won't work.
Right.
308. I prefer to use a CCI 450. Okay.
Yep.
That's a Magnum small rifle primer and a 308. So 7.5 Remington too. They'll work.
Yeah.
But, standard.
These are only 400s. Dang it.
Yeah.
What are these up here? Oh, those are 400s. Wow. Anyway, I really are going to organize my primers better. I've got them all over the place. That's a good problem to have. Anyway, so I mean, it's the reloading. You've got your basic level, and that's about it. Hand loading, there's so many different layers and levels and stuff that you can go through. You could be like Bench Addict that keeps digging and digging and digging. By the way, the better you get it, the deeper you get, you got to be careful so you don't wind up single, because then you got to go back up. Because see, if you wind up single, then you have to get a ladder because you got to go back up. So if you're gonna get to far down the rabbit hole, maybe you should be like Nick and be single from the start.
Exactly.
That's why Nick calls all the milsurp stuff. So, and you can go down the rabbit hole with milsurp.
Oh God, that's its own topic video.
So,
I'm getting ready to do it for a buddy for loading some ammo. It's called 9mm Glacinti. It's for one pistol, but it's basically 9mm Luger. Same bullet. Well, the bullet's a little different. It's the same case. It uses a truncated cone bullet, and it's only moving about 1,000 feet per second. So I have to kind of play with it and shoot through because I asked him, "Is like, what's your barrel length?" He's like, "So he gives me barrel length. It's exactly the same as my Glock. So I'll be able to do some testing, velocity wise, with my Glock to, because it's just a blowback pistol. That's what he's got. So
Yeah.
so
Well, that'd be a lot different then, because you got the polygonal rifling in the Glock, right?
Well, I don't. I have
Okay.
a Lone Wolf barrels. I have mine, so I can
Okay.
shoot cast. I can shoot all that. So no, yeah. There's so many different rabbit holes and case recase forming. They're just case conversions, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we have on Discord, we have a shooter who is forming 22-250 from 308 cases.
mhm.
Yep.
Talk about a difference in case weight and
No
volume.
kidding.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's we're seeing a lot of stuff here, guys, as far as people going down a rabbit hole just to find something that it's really hard to find right now.
Right.
22-250 cases. Nick is sitting there making cases out of 20 gauge shotgun shells.
Yeah. We're getting to the point where 8mm Mauser brass is getting hard to find.
Oh.
So we're having to take 270 brass and reform it. So yeah, that 7.7 Jap's always a lot hard to find. 6.5 Jap, there's a lot of them that are difficult to find. So we're having to convert. 270 is one we convert a lot of. I'm already looking for if I get some old like 1870s Mausers. I'm gonna have to buy like 50-90 sharps and convert that down. So
all right, gang. Excuse me. Sorry about that, Chris. Let's wrap this puppy up. So we want to talk about our sponsors. Patriot Patch Company. Here's the patch of the month for September. October's coming. I honestly haven't seen it yet. I got the email, but I didn't look at it. So here's September's. October's is coming. You get the patch, and you get a decal, and then you get Ryan Cross's rough draft drawing. So if you're a Patch of the Month member. PatriotPatch.co, they also offer a whole bunch of other stuff. So also want to thank forpatriots.com for being a sponsor. They have an incredible amount of stuff. Anything from survival to prepping to all sorts of different needs and necessities. They've got the solar powered generators. They've got survival food. They've got all sorts of packages. You can make your own packages even. They've got stuff for emergency drinking water. They've got a camp stove. They've got weatherproof fire starters. They've got compact rechargeable fans. So that's new. They've got a bug out solar powered bug zapper. Yes. So make sure you swing by, check them out. That's forpatriots.com. So I use FRN, use code FRN at forpatriots.com and you will save 10%. So
one order only.
Yep. So swing over, check them out. We appreciate both of them and both of their long-term sponsorships. So Oder Sigerson, I guess the term hand loading may not so much to do with the money of your equipment, the cost of your equipment, but how you use your equipment and info. It's all based on your own thought. That pretty much sums it up. If you buy the most expensive equipment, but you're not using it correctly and you're not using it to its potential, and you're using cheap brass and cheap bullets, and it's not going to help. So it's a process of steps that you need to take. So
it's looking at reloading and then taking each step that you would, treat your brass, fill your brass, seat your bullet in the most consistent way you can.
Yep.
And basically that's hand loading. I mean, it's if I want to reload, I can sit down and I can put together rounds without a problem. I mean, I can, even on a single stage press, I could sit down in a day and load 1,000 223. Wouldn't be hard.
Done it.
Yeah, but the hand load 1,000 223, no, doesn't happen. Just does not happen. Now, of course, when you get your brass prep done, you don't have, there's not a whole lot going back other than to fix primer pockets, because somehow or another, when you let 60,000 PSI go, it tries to push that primer pocket back to where it was before.
Yeah.
So you have to do a few things of checking, but that's it. I'm sorry, I'm rambling again.
It happens at 70 years old.
Yeah.
So, all right, gang. Anybody got any shout outs?
No.
Shout out to Jim, who tried to join us, and his technology decided he wasn't going to join us. So,
yeah.
But other than that, keep your brass shiny.
Jump on the Millsap short bus.
Shoot smarter, not harder.
Oh, I forgot to mention one thing.
Go ahead.
Break.
Squeeze.
We like shooting. And Brownells and Colt are giving away a Python.
Ooh.
Go to brownells.com/contest. And they are giving away a special edition engraved Colt Python.
Oh. That's a real gun, guys.
Uh-huh. And it is really friggin' gorgeous. So once again, brownells.com/contest. Go over there and register to win. Obviously, we can't because, we're part of FRN, so we suck. But the rest of you can go, and no spouses can either, Chris. Aaron already tried on Monday night to get anybody he could think of that's slightly related to him on how to win this, to get this Colt. I don't blame him. I mean, it's a Colt friggin' Python, so. But yeah. Brownells.com/contest and see if you can win. So
I'll just bring one in under the company as an expense.
I like that idea. So, okay, where were we?
Yeah,
Keep Grandpa.
Grandpa.
Jump on Millsap short bus.
Shoot smarter, not harder.
And Grandpa told me, don't listen to my mama. She goes, violence does solve problems.
Support the Second Amendment. Make sure you're participating with your local organizations and national ones that you trust. And since Second Amendment Foundation and some of the other ones that are doing the good work in Holland right now, unfortunately, we've gotten to the point where until we can change out elected officials, they're continuing. The anti-gunners are still trying to pass stupid laws that are not going to stand up to Bruin, and they're daring us to haul them into court to do it. Mm-hmm. So we need to help fund that. So if you've got an extra, money that you might spend in a, McDonald's one day or whatever, or that type of thing,
take $20 a month and toss it to somebody.
Yeah. Make sure you do your homework though before you give it to them, to make sure they're actually doing stuff and not one of the organizations that just says they're doing stuff. You can find out who's all on a court case by searching the case, and you'll find out who the plaintiffs are and the defendants are and all that fun stuff. So if they're not listed as plaintiffs on cases, don't give them money. So, and most importantly, if you're struggling, 1-800-273-8255 or 988 from a cell phone, reach out, get some help. We want you here. We need you here. Mental health is a serious issue, and we do need to, you need to work on that as much as your physical health. So sometimes even more, because sometimes the mental health is debilitating to the point where you don't or can't do anything with the physical health. So, like I said, reach out, 988 or 1-800-273-8255. It's a starting point, but it's a journey worthwhile when you can look back and go, ha. So, but all right, hang in there, gang. Thanks and good night.
Good night.
Night.